This is a Film Stories original podcast.
We made this.
Welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey!
Hello there, faithful downloaders. Welcome to Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast here on the We Made This podcast network. I am your host, again. I am Carl Bryan, and joining me, as always, is Kurt North. Hello, Kurt.
Hello. How are you?
I'm pretty good, Kurt. Yourself?
Not too bad. I'm still ill, but still here. It's the best way to put it.
Kurt has managed to do now the entire series of Series 7 whilst not at 100%.
Yeah, I've done all right. I'd give my left arm for this show.
I see what you did there.
And I'm left-handed as well. And it does all my favourite things, Mark.
Does it now? Mine too.
And also, from an undisclosed location, is Mark Adams. Hello, Mark.
Hello. I am indeed from an undisclosed location, but we're not going to talk about that because, we're back. And it feels like, I don't know, it feels like this has been a massively long series just because there's been 2 extra episodes. And we've got to do it again for Series 8 as well.
I do remember sort of on our booking sheet that we had for who we're going to do, and usually we split it up into, 2, and 2. But then when we hit Series 8 with its 3-parters, and its 2-parters, we're like, this is throwing everything. This is bollocks. What are we going to do? And it only just got fixed recently, I think, from what I remember. Anyway, we're here to talk about the series finale of Series 7, Nanarchy, which is not an invasion of grandmas, but we will be... Nothing for that one? Okay.
It took me a while, but I was there.
Sorry, my internet cut out completely, so I didn't hear the gag.
Fair enough.
I got it, but just delayed.
That's fine. It's fine.
And I wasn't lagging. It was just my brain.
Okay, so we start this episode with something we don't normally get in these episodes, which is a previously on Red Dwarf.
Have we ever got it? I don't think we have.
Neither do I. And I actually don't think it was needed here. Because I think if you're watching in Series 7, you've been watching all of Series 7. You know what I mean? I think we've established that it is a lot of hardcore fans. So I don't think... And I thought that the previously was edited really weirdly.
I mean, I think to some extent it was probably just so they could get the something terrible happened to Mr. Listener's arm. I think it was for that gag more than anything. And also because maybe they didn't have as much content after they'd shoved it all in to Epidine.
Yeah.
I also think that this episode was kind of reconstituted because it was going to be earlier on in the series. And the things like Mr. Lister's arm had to be included. And partly what I said yesterday about last week having loads of things packed into it and this one being slightly different is because this wasn't designed to be the end of the series. And it was, they always wanted to get to Red Dwarf at the end of the series itself. But this wasn't the intended finish point. So I think there's maybe a little bit of that, of loss in confidence a little bit on, why does Lister not have an arm? Maybe it was just the fact that it maybe looked like it was a bit jarring.
Yeah.
If you had come into it on a... I'll catch up on the last episode of Red Dwarf, see what's going on. And then all of a sudden it's like, hang on, Liz has got one arm, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So
if it wasn't for the Crichton voiceover gag, I actually thought for a moment that this was something Prime had done. Because as we're recording this, the first 8 series of Red Dwarf are currently on Amazon Prime, which led to, I don't know if you, did either of you two watch it on Prime or did you watch it
I watched it on Prime, yeah.
Did you have the same reaction as I did, Curtis, when the title sequence cropped up and that had the widescreen bars at the top and bottom? I thought, oh my God, the quality on this is appalling.
Yeah.
I thought the picture
it's not the best.
I thought the picture was going to be like an eighth of the size. Oh dear. Anyway, so we go through our title sequence and previously on, and we join the crew, and Lister is finding one-armed life a bit difficult. However, Crichton's determined to not let him stop doing the things he loved, and we are joined as he is playing the guitar. About as well as Lister ever played the guitar.
I was going to say that. I think when it goes to the halftime, when it's going da 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 bit, I was like, that's the best he's ever played.
Yeah. Do you think that was a happy accident on set? And it's just like, because you get the feeling that Craig Charles and Robert Llewellyn are really enjoying doing this bit.
Yeah.
But it sounds like they actually hit upon a point where they didn't sound too bad, and it was just a happy accident.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're a musician, Kurt. Have you ever tried to play guitar with like two people?
No, I haven't actually. No.
You've never done the somebody hitting the solo and you put your arms around to play with them, the full slash.
There's a great, I think it's Italian group that do Billie Jean like that, where they've got like 4 people on one acoustic guitar.
Oh, nice.
It's really, really good. It's like one person doing the actual ding, 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 and someone else doing the actual the melody, and got someone on the drum on the guitar and stuff. It's really, really good. But no, I haven't personally done that.
For some reason, that just reminds me of, I went to see Bill Bailey quite early on. This is like pre-part Troll. So round about the sort of Is It Bill Bailey time, and he would go off stage and keep coming on with bigger and bigger guitars at the end until he ran on with the 4-headed guitar, the 4-necked guitar.
Yeah.
And he would play something whenever he came out, and he comes out with a 4-neck guitar and he goes, I can't play it, but it just looks great. So they try and cheer Lister up, but it's not particularly great. They try and point out all the historical figures who've lost an arm and achieved something, but it's a slim list. The one that kind of stuck out to me was The Fugitive, because it's not often, well, it doesn't feel that things get referenced that weren't too long ago, if you know what I mean. If it's something that gets referenced, it's like Elvis or Hitler, which is a weird thing to say when I say it.
They do reference Hitler a lot.
Yeah. But something like The Fugitive, I mean, this was only a couple of years out from the Harrison Ford movie. I know there was the original back in the day, but it just seemed very odd for them to be referencing pop culture this much. What did you think when you heard that bit?
I don't know. Maybe it's because we grew up around that era that it's a film that will stick in the mind a little bit. It is like one of the bigger films as such. It's not like it's it won't fall off the cliff. There'll be a remake of it in the future. You can guarantee it. You know what I mean? It's one of those stories that will stand the test of time a little bit, I think.
I don't think it's particularly peculiar. We got to remember this is 1997 that this was released, and the Peter Beardsley gags were timely for 1988 when they cracked them in Series 1. And you can't expect Peter Beardsley or Helen Shapiro jokes that much later. So I think, however flawed it is to put in almost time-stamped gags, particularly in a sci-fi, it was funny.
Yeah. I think it was just a bit odd for me because it felt like something that was quite recent. It was like maybe, yeah, I think because it seemed recent because the film wasn't that far before that. It was like, oh, they're doing up-to-date pop culture references. But like you say, it does get remade every 20-odd years or so. I've written Napoleon here, but I don't mean Napoleon. I can't.
Horatio Nelson.
That's it, Nelson. Yeah. So I was like, Napoleon. And I was like, I nipped to the shop before we did the recording today. And I just went, Napoleon didn't beat the French. Napoleon was French. And then I just completely blanked on the name. But yeah, so Nelson had one arm, and The Fugitive, and the Venus de Milo, which not only achieved a lot with not having one arm, but didn't have either arm. And they had a successful modelling career, as Crichton puts it.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I thought it was a great gag.
Yeah. This is all summed up by Kat pointing out that guy in Mexico who robs people.
And then he does the Gun with the Apocalypse stamp.
He does.
Yeah. Like perfectly.
The thing I like as well in this whole scene, and it goes through the episode quite a bit, is Lister's not going for it. he is depressed.
Yeah.
And it's only something we've seen. We saw it a little bit in like time slides where it starts to really get to him.
Yeah.
But this seems more that he's angry as well, and that's something that comes in later in the episode.
Yeah,
is that he's depressed and angry. Yeah,
I was surprised they didn't factor. I suppose because people won't know his name, but Ricky Allen from Def Leppard. I'm surprised that wasn't brought up. For those people who might not know Def Leppard's story, is that Ricky Allen was in it was in Britain. It was actually back in Sheffield, I think. New Year's Eve, I think it was. He was driving an American-style car, so obviously the wheels on the other side, and he rolled it into a field, and the seatbelt had ripped off his arm. What's more horrific about it is that they reattached the arm only for it a couple of weeks later or a few days, wherever it was. I don't remember the exact details. That they actually tried to put his arm back together and actually sewed it back together. It got gangrene and had to be cut off again. So he lost his arm twice. But the fact that he managed to then, that was in 1985, he managed to then come back and have a still continue his career on. And there's a couple of like sort of TV movies that cover it that have done quite a good job of it, and Def Leppard was the first band I saw in 92. So it was just interesting that, that one arm thing, every time I see it, I always think of Ricky Allen. That's the first thing I think of. So I just wanted to mention that, really.
Pretty much at their peak as well when he did it, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was after, I think the Hysteria was probably 1983, 1984, potentially. And it was like just when because it was I think it was like a Lamborghini or something he was driving. So it was right at the peak.
Yeah. So we're on, because this what happened to him. There's what happened to the drummer from Slade with his short-term memory issues, and then every drummer that Spinal Tap ever had. So Kochanski takes Crichton to one side as she believes that he's being nannying him far too much. Although
another big bick.
Yeah, I love the term big bick.
Me too.
And it's quite interesting because in the performance, because I don't know how you felt about it, but seeing Crichton sort of smother Lister to the point where Lister's barely even moving and Crichton's doing everything around him, you can see it, and you almost like, don't, Crichton, don't do it. He can do it, and it's quite well quite good how that pulls it out of you, I feel.
I mean, I've been guilty of over coddling in the past. I am a little bit of a clucky old queen when it comes to looking after people, and sometimes, it's a kindness that's appreciated, and sometimes back the fuck off, Mark. And I can't. I'm a lot like Crichton. I can't kind of manage it without being explicitly told, "Thank you, Mark. You're being really helpful." Or, "What the fuck are you doing, you stupid cow?" So I get it, and I can very much empathise with how Crichton's behaving here.
Yeah, you just you probably see it with your own family in some cases, or you've seen friends who just get so bummed out and people are doing stuff for them. And it's like Kochanski says, it's like, he needs to get on his own feet. He needs to learn how to work. He's still got another arm, but watching them, you think he's got no arms.
Yeah. And it's adding to the depression that he's got, isn't it? Because he's just being more and more insular, more and more, right, well, I can get help. I don't feel like I can stretch myself. And as you say, it's really a dark episode, and I like it for that reason. I think it's really interesting discussion point to have, and I don't think Red Dwarf goes this dark that often, so I think it's good.
Yeah. So she asks Crichton if he knows what tough love is, and I can't remember what Crichton's answer is, but does it involve?
He talks about the 24-hour wipe alert.
Yes.
Think, well, I've got to be on 24-hour wipe alert, sir.
Yeah. And I like that Kochanski jumps to because it's Lister, she jumps to the most disgusting conclusions to what wipe alert is, but it's crumbs round his mouth, fortunately. But the 24-hour wipe alert is what's been stopping Crichton from doing the job that they wanted him to do, which is building Lister a mechanical arm. So now he's no longer on wipe alert. He is going to get onto that. Meanwhile, the cat and Lister are playing checkers, and the cat is being very much the cat in what feels like a bit of a sequel to the part in Ducked Soup.
Yes.
Where the cat is like, woo-wee, could not swing me around in here. Where the cat's exposing on how bad it is for Lister to only have one arm. And can you imagine what it would be like?
No, it's just brilliant, isn't it?
What I love about it is the cat has been malicious in the past, whereas this doesn't have malice. It's just his mouth is running away with him. He's saying all the wrong things. He doesn't realise he's being naive. I really like this because it's a weird kind of character development for the cat.
Yeah, and Craig Charles is showing a lot when all he is saying is your move.
Yeah.
And how it builds until eventually he yells at the cat, which is something you never really see. Not this angry, I don't think, anyway. You see him get annoyed with the cat, but he's never out and out supremely pissed off at the cat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it goes back to the whole thing of like, it's not, yes, it's the cat's drawing that out of him, but it's not, he's frustrated within himself.
Yeah.
That, and that's what I think I really like about this episode is that, yes, it is the cat going, can you imagine that? It's like, oh my God, shut up. But the fact that it's just amplifying what Lister's already feeling.
Yeah.
And he's already feeling frustrated. And it's just making him, he's trying to hold it in. And he can't hold it in anymore because the cat's pulling that out of him.
So good.
Also, something I think that gets raised in the Kochanski-Crichton scene is Kochanski sort of saying, I'm not a heartless bitch.
Yeah.
Which I think is quite nice, is that she knows what the situation is, but it's not like the sitcom thing of at the start of the end of the episode, after the episode goes off the air, everything kind of resets and everything's great again.
Yeah.
She knows it's not been great for her and Crichton.
Yeah, and you've got to remember as well that Kochanski's been through this before with Lister being a hologram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Lister would have probably gone through this before.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. I hadn't thought about that.
I have remembered the line now that I loved, which is, have you ever heard of tough love? Does it involve dressing up? So we then go to the attempt to give Lister a mechanical arm. And this is probably the highlight of the episode, would you say?
It's just one of the funniest moments of Red Dwarf ever. I absolutely love this scene. It goes on a bit too long.
No, it doesn't go on too long. But you mentioned
just a little bit.
No, disagree. The face acting in the previous scene where he's getting angry is only ever bettered by Craig Charles by the face acting in this scene. So it's two scenes with he's just face, and his face is a great face.
Yeah,
and it's with the dog as well. It's like sort of a pit bull. A pit bull's always ugly. It's ugly with 4 legs. It's ugly with 3 legs.
It's a good performance all round in this because at the start of the scene with the arm, Craig Charles is completely different. Lister's different. He's up. He's enthusiastic because he thinks, in the same way I can imagine a lot of people who have false appendages have, when they first get it, they think, oh, I'm just going to put on this false leg and walk. I can imagine there is that sense of, it can't be too hard, it's a leg. I can imagine that is in there, and then you kind of have to learn the hard way.
Mm.
And Lister's got the hand on, and now we see this tour de force of emotion of him as hand pick up the ball.
And what I love about it is that it's all about the final gag. If I ever wanted my hand to pick up a ball, I'm going to have to take the morning off. So funny. But it's like 3 minutes to build up to that gag. It's so funny. It's kind of, it's something that I think Stuart Lee has really kind of honed on more recently. Yeah. Also the guitar humor where it takes so long to get there. And you just sat there almost awkwardly laughing. Done twice in this episode. And that's again, that's the humour that I really, really like. I just sat there laughing.
So what I mean by length, the time is up until that point I'm happy with.
Yeah.
It's the subconscious stuff afterwards. It kind of goes, it drops off a little bit. It would have been great just to cut at that point where it's say take the morning off, or and rather than when he starts to adjust it, that's when it becomes a bit more.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by length of that whole scene. It's not up until that point. Yeah.
I quite like the fact that Crichton realises, but it almost doesn't twig for him that the reason Lister's punching him in the face is subconsciously he's mad at Crichton.
Yeah.
So what you're thinking is hand pick up the ball, but what you're thinking is punch Crichton in the face.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just a great scene. And Craig Charles, it must have been, he's really putting it in, like the physical exertion on the face and everything. You want him to pick up that ball. You do really want him to do it. So when he does it, it's almost an anticlimax because you always expect him to like grab it and lift it into the air, and he doesn't. He just moves it an inch. It's
hand pick up the ball.
Yeah. Again, there's the T-shirt. Hand pick up the ball, or red dwarf balls.
Yeah, we need to put a hand pick up the ball. Have to.
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. So the subconscious thing as well, because he mentions about, a few minutes of Kachansky.
Yes, we can't, yeah. So he can't wear the arm because, oh God, yeah. That's a good joke. It's a kind of subtle joke, really. It doesn't seem like a subtle joke, but it is a subtle joke in like, you have to go, oh yeah. Oh, right, yeah.
It's yucky, but it's actually painfully realistic that no one wants an arm that responds to your subconscious, because your subconscious is not as nice as your conscious. It's just not. We're all fucking animals.
Yeah, I mean, you could have had a whole episode of Lister with an arm that he couldn't control.
You could.
I think the original story had more of that. I think that was one of the original things that was they were going to have of Lister going through multiple iterations of things failing and not working for him and things like that. That was kind of the joke that the episode was built around.
Yeah.
But then obviously because of the previous episode, it was kind of like, right, we need to redraft it. John Hendry had already left by this point, so he'd written most of it. But it was up to Paul Alexander and Doug Naylor to kind of redraft it into this form.
Yeah. They're sitting around the table. Lister's trying to eat spaghetti with one arm, he's making a meal of it. I do think you can manage it with one arm because he's trying to spin it around, but because it's Lister, it's this whole thing of him like Lady and the Tramping himself almost with the with the spaghetti. But while they're sitting talking around, Kachansky hits upon an idea, which was Crichton, in my time, had a self-repair system made up of tiny robots, nanobots. Now, I can't remember, in the real world, were nanobots a thing yet?
James Hendry was reading quite a lot of scientific research and wanted to instill that into an episode. So I can imagine that it was a science fiction trope already. Nanobots. I think the best of... Oh, no, because the Borg implants and nanobots didn't come into Voyager. And that was maybe around this time as well, because Voyager had the Borg, who would obviously take over people in Next Generation. But in Voyager, they started to have nanites, which was, I think, would have been maybe the fourth season, 96, would have been around 2000. So, yeah, so nanobots was a kind of a thing late 90s, early 2000s.
I remember Prince Charles being about nanobites at one point, but I can't remember why or when it was. I just remember he did a big thing when he was talking about it. But in that same way that Prince Charles is like, oh, yes, the plants, in that he just kind of comes out about stuff.
Quick editor's note here for you. This episode was recorded before the death of Queen Elizabeth II, so at the time, King Charles was indeed Prince Charles. Sorry about that.
I think season 6 of the X-Files as well. When was season 6 of the X-Files? Season 6 was in 1999. They had a nanobot story as well. That was in 99. So yeah, it's definitely 97 to 2000 odd was when nanobots was a thing science fiction wise.
So Crichton tries to explain nanobots to the cat. He tries to think of a cogent paradigm, but Cat would rather have a good example.
That is a great line.
It's a really good line. He also wants the big writing version with pictures.
So that particular line is my quotable dwarf of the episode, but I do kind of bastardize it. I say Ladybird book with pictures. So if someone's talking about something that I just haven't got the experience of, or something that I find intimidating, like maths, I'm like, can you give me the Ladybird book with pictures version, please? And that's got to be where I've got it from. It's got to be, even though I've bastardized it.
It'd be quite funny if that cat asked for the big one that he could smell.
Yes, because cat writing is a smell, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fuck.
So Crichton explains nanobots in that they're subatomic and they can break anything down to a subatomic level and then reassemble it, using a pencil as an example, where he could turn a pencil into diamonds, which impresses the cat no end.
Yeah, and a good science thing, that, because diamond is still 99.9999% empty space. So the fact that, a pencil is carbon and can be put down into a diamond, and I think that if you had every human being on the planet shrunk down to a sugar cube, you can still do that because of the amount of space that's available. I mean, that just goes to show you 7 billion people can be shrunk down up into a sugar cube. It's just, it's hard to fathom, but that is possible because of the empty space. So having the carbons and stuff like that is an interesting science thing behind it.
I don't think we should go into the diamond debate, but I am a wedding celebrant as one of my jobs. And I remember one of my couples had an ethical diamond. Do you know the only way to guarantee an ethical diamond?
No.
Man-made. That's the only way to absolutely guarantee that it's not a blood diamond, because of the sources of diamonds and all the kind of horrible shit. This fella researched it and he had a diamond made. It looked like a diamond. It was perfect. And it cost pennies to make it. And it was the only way he could get an ethical diamond, which is fascinating because diamonds are so kind of the way they're transported around and kind of almost like money laundering, but with diamonds. You can't guarantee, if you want an ethical diamond, that it hasn't got blood on it. And so, the only ethical diamonds are man-made. Fascinating.
I thought for a second that you were going to go, it looks like a diamond, it smells like a diamond. So what does a diamond smell like?
Well, I suppose it does smell like a diamond if you've got a cat's nose.
True. So yes, if these nanobots could do that, they could put it into Lister and they could make him a new arm from his excess body tissue, which didn't turn out to be a fat joke because Craig Charles is very slender in this series. However, there is one massive problem. Crichton does have them, but he doesn't know where they are because they deserted him after the... It took me a second to realise what this one when he said, after the incident on the Esperanto. I was like, it was back to reality, which is the last time we saw Red Dwarf. So, they deserted him after that, and he doesn't know how to find them, but Lister won't give up.
I didn't expect a Series 5 reference, or at least as deep a Series 5 reference. And the only problem I have with it is everyone's like, let's go! Has Kachansky completely given up on finding a wormhole? That was kind of the focus of the third, fourth, and fifth episode of the series was let's get Kachansky home. And then suddenly it's been dropped like a bad habit.
Yeah. I mean, maybe she's just happy there where she is. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't think of it that way.
I've got another question.
Go on.
What time frame are we in here? Because 18 months later, we go back in time and put a baby under a pool table. When did that happen? When did that happen? Because up until this point, I was quite happy with actually thinking, all right, okay, so we haven't actually got to the point where Kachansky could have a baby yet. In 18 months' time, we will get there. Now, whether or not that's between 8 and 9 or wherever it may well be, but there's definitely a gap there. And there shouldn't be a gap
She definitely doesn't have a baby in prison. That wouldn't be ideal, would it?
No.
Was it not in the tube? Because they use the tube, don't they? Doesn't that...
Oh, are you saying it's grown in the tube? Well, that makes sense,
like a
actually.
test tube baby.
Okay. Yeah, that might help.
They call it an in vitro tube, which I thought meant something along the lines of that it would be... Because there was no real... On her part, there was no real, like, I'm not having a baby. You know, that kind of, like, the actual thing. So
that would mean then that, in answer to your question, have we had 18 months or so with Kachansky there? Because if a certain amount of time has passed now, where she's like been searching for the past 3 or 4 episodes, but it's over a time span of 2 and a bit years, then she might have given up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think she does still bring them up, but she almost talks about them like they're in the past tense. So maybe there's just a thing that maybe they just kept it open. So if say Chloe Annett turned around and said, I don't want to do this anymore, then they could figure out a way to send her back. But if not, then they can just keep her where she is, keeping that string untied.
Yeah, it's just because obviously after this, they're going to be frozen in time for some considerable time now to get back to the Esperanto.
Yeah.
Because we're talking hundreds of years, aren't we? We're talking hundreds of years.
I do like the fact that Lister wants to go back to the Esperanto to find the nanobots, or at least attempt it. Crichton's really not up for it, but Lister just stares him down.
Yeah.
And Crichton heals. Do you think part of that is Crichton's quite happy with the current situation where he gets to wait on Lister hand and foot, but Lister wants an arm?
I don't know. It's debatable, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the fact that he's going back to his nanobots, which he's not happy with in the first place, he left them on purpose and he's having to go back and get them.
Did he leave them or did they desert him? I think
they deserted him.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's why he doesn't want to go find them.
Yeah. Anyway, they go into deep sleep, which is always a handy way to get around a plot.
I think, to be honest, I actually think it's quite fine. I think that's not a bad sci-fi plot, but...
Yeah, and it's established in the first episode that it's a thing.
We get some nice shots, actually some quite nice CGI shots, and then everybody gets thawed out and comes out with their water bottles and their sleep suits on, only to find that they have come out of deep sleep early. And the reason that they've come out of early is the scan has discovered something straight ahead of them, which is a strange planetoid. And when Crichton does a scanner, apparently it's Red Dwarf. Now, the first time that I heard this, and even the second time I heard this, it didn't make sense to me.
It's an interesting development. I'm not quite sure what I thought at the time, but yeah, it is a strange one, and you know, even going into the rest of the episode, it's a bit strange.
Yeah. So if this planet is Red Dwarf, apparently the weather scanner says it's beautiful weather and tropical temperatures. Kachansky now is settled in perfectly, so she now knows to dress for snow and take the buggy.
So this whole scene, it felt like there were a lot of punchlines that were clearly gags, but I just none of them were particularly funny to me. It felt like just a weak scene, and I didn't really get on with it until All Right Dudes, which popped me.
Yeah. I mean, there's one thing I realized watching it back was this was blatantly, we haven't got much money to do this scene and we can't make a planet. What do? Sandstorm, and we do the whole thing in the car. And I wouldn't have been shocked if the crew members were outside the car shaking it to give the buffeting effect. Also, I thought that the boiled sweet stuck to the head thing smacked a bit of cutesy romantic comedy, and it didn't really work.
Yeah.
It seemed a bit late in the day to start. Although it does have I think we mentioned it last episode, the what about sex?
Not here, it's too sandy.
Not here, it's too sandy. Which I think is quite cool, because we've seen it from Lister's perspective of like, oh, you know, I'm the last man alive. I could do with a shag. But Kachansky probably has needs as well.
Yeah. I like it. I like this element of her that, You know, she's especially when we get into series 8, when she starts talking about this in a bit more depth that you could have asked, and then there's moments where Lister kind of looks like bright-eyed. Not in a million years now, you know, because obviously these chances is gone.
Yeah.
But it gives you that little bit of like flirtatiousness that Kachansky can have, and as I say, just the way, and it's the dryness of the way she delivers those type of lines.
Yeah.
Like, no, not here. It's too sandy, and it's like, all right, okay, and it's not even. It's just straight off the bat, not really continued on. It's like, that's the joke, move on.
Yeah.
And I like that.
I like the delivery of it. I think this showed Chloe Annette getting more at ease with the character in these moments. Because as we're recording this at the moment, we're doing, I think this will be going out beforehand, but we are doing Crime Traveller, which has got Chloe Annette in it.
Crime Traveller is January next year, Carl. We're just way ahead because we fancied doing Crime Traveller.
So that's something to look forward to, is we are doing Crime Traveller. I think we've mentioned before we were going to be doing Crime Traveller. But it kind of, watching that and then watching this has been an interesting experience for myself, because it kind of made me realise that you've got a room full of comedians, essentially, and performers from that sort of world, and then you've dropped an actress in it.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably kind of added to it, in that she's, you know, they're doing their thing, which they've been doing now for nearly, probably over 10 years to get to season 7. And then she's been dropped in, and now, but she's still not, as an actor, she's still not found that rhythm that they've got, and she's trying to act. And I think, like you said, with the lack of the audience there, it's what's caused the jarring of it all.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. Because in Crime Traveller, something we talk about is how underrated Chloe Annette actually is as an actress. Mark, you've been very, say, in those episodes we've recorded, you've spoken a lot about how good she is.
I think she's brilliant. I think she's brilliant in
Yeah.
Red Dwarf. I think she's brilliant in Crime Traveller. And I think it's a travesty that she had these two big ones and then very little else, really.
Yeah. So, yes, they have a bit of a chat while the cat's outside the car. And then he comes back in, of course, with the hair completely messed up from the sandstorm. He gets a comb and then goes back into the sandstorm, which I'm not too sure about how that works. But he comes back in, and he's found a load of items all scattered around the planetoid, and apparently they're all over the planetoid. And we find out that the sand molecules, they didn't start off as sand, but they were all transformed by nanobots, and the whole planet is Red Dwarf, which obviously I've just put in a lot there, but it was kind of a lot to take in, I thought. And again, didn't make masses of sense to myself.
So it's really fucking weird. But does it need to be good? It is, after all, a sitcom rather than hard sci-fi. Could it have been better? Yes, it could. Have we seen better sci-fi in Red Dwarf? Definitely. Do I care?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I do.
No. It would have been nice, I think, to see in the planet a bit when he was talking about, oh, there's all sorts out here, there's vending machines and everything. You know, if ever there was a time for a Talkie Toaster cameo, that would have probably worked out quite well.
Yeah. Yeah, if you had the budget to, like, as you say, have the vending machines in there, just standing alone in a desert storm, or like have it really abstract and weird.
Yeah.
That would work. But as you say, I think we've alluded to it, that maybe the money wasn't there to 8 episodes rather than 6.
Yeah.
On top of that, we can guarantee they wouldn't have had the sitcom money. So
I reckon if it was a Dave series, they'd have CG'd it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they go back to Starbug with the items that they took from Red Dwarf, and the haul is immense, what they've found. This is my quotable dwarf, actually, which is what a haul. I don't know why that comes through to me, but I do. Whenever something like that happens, it's like, oh, we've got this, 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 and this. Oh, what a haul. That sticks with me, and I still use it to this day. It's quite weird. So I've just pulled it up in front of me as to what they found. So they find napkin rings, a box of hairnet requisition forms, and a motorized tie rack and an inflatable shark.
I would quite like a motorized tie rack.
Haven't they mentioned that before? Is it Rimmer's motorised tie rack?
It might be.
Yeah.
There's going back to another story, another anecdote for me. I was once playing a gig at this really posh hotel, and we went through thousands of pints of lager because there were the really tall pints that are kind of really sort of got a short stem on them, so they just knock. They were so easy to knock over. But anyway, we were drinking. They had, when like weddings have like the you can have pictures of random things like put goggles on and hats and stuff like that. They had that, and they had an inflatable shark, and my mate put these goggles on, these swimming goggles on, and we were all in this corner, and there was like beach balls and all kinds, and we were in this corner, and my mate was like sort of going through this just before the worlds of iPads, and he was writing down some of his notes for his lyrics and stuff like that, and my mate was getting more and more drunk at the time, and you could see him getting more and more drunk. And I don't know if you ever have this, but if you ever have a friend where you can just see the switch and you know that something's going to happen just because of the way that their body like works, and it's like, okay, he's drunk. Okay. So my mate like literally grabbed hold of his book of lyrics, closed them and moved them to one side because my mate was getting quite agitated with this, like using a shark to swing at the beach ball, like playing cricket with it. And he swung the shark at the beach ball, hit it as hard as he possibly could, pretended he was hitting it for six, turned around and basically did in one fell swoop, turned around, at which point there was a girl behind him who we didn't know was there. He rapidly turned around, picked her up because he kind of like didn't see her there, right up into the air and body slammed her into the floor. I was like, oh my God. It was just like, when you just like see something in slow motion, you're just looking going, oh no, oh no, oh no. But yeah, absolutely body slammed her, at which point he basically bought her drinks for the rest of the night. But yeah, it was so funny. It was just like, you just knew for about 30 seconds before the actual chain of events happened that something was going to go wrong. Yeah. And that was it for me with that inflatable shark, and it was brilliant, absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So they go through this box, inflatable shark, mechanical tie rack, and a watch. Lister seems to recognise this watch, and he picks it up, and after a brief second, what do we hear, Mark?
All right, dudes.
And then Mark popped.
I did pop, but with hindsight, and I'll ask you both this, would you have preferred Norman or Hattie?
Hattie. I would have preferred Hattie.
Kurt?
I'm a bit 50-50, really.
I think I would have preferred Hattie. It makes more sense because they've brought back the Red Dwarf prior to everything happening 3 million years ago. So they would have had to have had some wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey on it, but I just don't feel like Hattie got a fair crack of the whip.
Do you know what I would have liked to have seen, actually, having watched some of Series 8, and I'll mention it here because I probably won't mention it next, that if I think it through as a story, I think I would have preferred Hattie, because in Series 8, when they're trying to get away and they're under the psychotropic drugs, you'd have had a Holly on Red Dwarf and a Holly on the Watch, and it would have been Norman and Hattie.
Yeah.
And you would have had both, and Hattie would have delivered.
That would have made sense, and you'd have got both of the Hollies. Oh, what a shame. What a shame.
Yeah. Also, there's the thing of, basically, so Holly is back after technically 2 series, but in terms of Norman Lovett, after 11 years. And when asked what happened, he blames the nanobots for, basically, the way they phrase it is, they fixed his core program, but the only change that they made was they turned him back into Norman Lovett. He's still senile.
And also, they retcon it next series as well.
It's the only real instance where they dealt with his transition to a woman really, really well, really, really sensitively, and like it wasn't a big deal. And the phraseology is, it clearly wasn't deliberate, but it's a bit unfortunate that someone who transitioned into a woman was fixed and became a man again. It's not deliberate. It's not actively a statement in any way, shape, or form. But it's a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I say, I think in hindsight, with my idea there with the Hattie thing, it would have worked better. But then they wouldn't have known what they were writing for Series 8. So that's unfortunate. So the nanobots remolecularizing in Series 8, they retcon it because Holly says that he did it.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's for another series.
Yeah, so that he they broke down the whole ship, and then they left all the bits that they didn't want on the planetoid. So that planet is Red Dwarf, but it's just the stuff the nanobots didn't want to take with them. And of course, that means they left Holly. And by the sounds of it, they met Holly, spent a little bit of time, and then just left him behind.
Yeah.
There's a moment where it's revealed that Holly is still senile because he doesn't remember who Crichton is. But then it dawned on me that Holly won't know who Crichton is that much because he's only met him once. Oh, no, it's the same Holly, isn't it? Same personality. I didn't think of that.
Because the same in Series 8 when they talk about the luck virus. It was Hattie's Holly that it wasn't Norman Lovett's Holly, but they're both Holly. So
yeah, true.
They'll both remember what happened.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. They realised that the reason why, and I thought this was a nice little touch, that the reason why the vapor trail that they've been chasing for so long is so small is because Red Dwarf has been taken down to a subatomic level. So it's not that they were so far away they couldn't send it. It was just so small. It could have been anywhere. But now it's gone and the trail's gone dead. But Holly has an idea. It may still be on board somewhere. So all they need to do is inverse their scan and they may find something. He's back. Kicking bottom or what?
So daft. And I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did say, actually, Norman Lovett said that we had a brief meeting. I said, gags, give me gags. And he was pleased to see that there was good as any that he'd done in the past. I went back in a professional way and did the job. I'm delighted. That's what Norman Lovett said.
Yeah, because it wasn't very nice between them for a while, was it?
We've speculated on it, yeah.
No, and this was in Starburst magazine that he said that as well, just so you're aware.
Formerly Opal Fruits magazine. So they decide to turn the scanner inwards, and they find the nanobots in possibly the most obvious place, which is Lister's laundry basket. A hole in his jockstrap could be a galaxy to them, which Lister likes the idea of.
Yeah, he's discovering strange new worlds in my laundry basket.
They decide to do a scan, and Crichton uses the highly scientific method of sticking a jam jar in there until he finds something. And again, we have the same with the epideme of we see them on the screen in, again, a Winamp visualizer kind of way.
It's a bit torturous, though, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But Crichton's just getting
his own
back after them leaving him, using the pencil and jar technique. I do for some reason remember very vividly, and I probably use this as part of my quotable dwarf, is "you pesky little critters," and it just sounds so good coming out of in Crichton's voice. "You pesky little critters." He gives them a good talking to and tells them they want their ship back and they want an arm for Lister, which is all they want. So eventually they agree after Crichton gives some more ting, 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 ting on the side of the jar. And Lister is taken to the med bay to get his new arm. Things don't go brilliantly to plan. Although as I am just skipping over the scene where Crichton tells Lister how they're going to get this done, which is by inserting them into it, which he uses his finger to show.
Yeah.
Lister looks very disturbed.
I keep thinking that he says, I'm going to insert it with this mid-digit, but it's not that.
No.
That's not what he says. But in my head, that's what he says. I think it's from a previous episode that he might say that somewhere. But for some reason, I just think of that, and I automatically think that he says, I'm going to insert them with this mid-digit. And he doesn't.
I think it's in Back to Reality, because if those fat asses at City Hall don't like it, then they can sit on this mid-digit. I think that's where he says it from before.
Right, okay.
Was it swivel like pigs on a honeymoon?
Yeah, I was going to say there's also that in Crichton. I think this scene, to me, ever so slightly dates it, because I think heterosexual men are a bit more kind of, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's just the heterosexual men I know, are a bit more kind of experimental with that sort of thing.
Are you worried about saying pegging on the podcast, Mark?
No, I'm not. I'm just, that just feels like strangely dates it, because sexuality and bendy stuff, for want of a better phrase, is less taboo than it was in the 90s.
I don't know if it's a sexuality thing. I think, to me, when you see the actual scene, Crichton's hand is quite large.
True. True.
Maybe Lister's like, I can do something, but I can't do that. Oh, dear. I was worth it for that look, Mark. Right.
The look that no one else can see, because this is a audio medium.
Yeah. So the nanobots get to work, and some time passes, and in comes Crichton, Kachansky, and the cat, covering their eyes, because maybe it's a negative way of looking at it. They're waiting for it to go wrong, aren't they, basically?
Yeah.
However, they all turn around on 3, and they find it's been a massive success. A massive, massive success.
Some would say a 500% success.
Exactly. As Lister now has the body of a bodybuilder. And what a body.
Yeah, so that's the kind of body that I want, because I think other people find it attractive. But I really don't fancy people that look like that at all. I find it actively unattractive if someone looks like that. I just like skinny geeks. But I want to look like that. Being a gay man is a weird thing.
It's interesting because I think it's a practical cut, isn't it? It's like a practical wipe that they do for Craig Charles's head and this bodybuilder's body.
Yeah.
And when he's in the actual bed, it looks all right. But when it's slightly off to one side. They even mentioned
it's off to the left. Yeah, it's off to the left, isn't it?
They even mentioned this in the documentary. It's like, I could do that. I think it's Ed Byers like, I could really, or somebody's like, I'll just do that again. Just move it a little bit.
Because the effect is good. The actual effect is really good.
Lister can't see yet because his neck's still in a neck brace. And then Crichton runs away. Because if Lister was angry at him before with a mechanical arm, Lister with this massive muscular body being angry at him is probably going to end quite badly.
Quite.
So it's left down to Kachansky to release him. And I do like the fact that she says to him, they were probably just trying to make up for things, which I don't know was like because of what they did before or because Lister wasn't in the best shape in the first place.
What I like about it is it's actually quite a clever little subtle foreshadowing for the final gag of the series. Because they made Lister bigger and then they made...
500% bigger. Would you react the same way Lister did if you woke up and realised you had this body?
I would look at the penis, then I'd make my decision.
Yeah.
If I had a bodybuilder's penis, I'd be disappointed. But if I had that body and a massive dong, I'd be well chuffed.
Mm-hmm.
I think I probably would have that kind of reaction only because I know I wouldn't be able to keep it up. And I wouldn't like to see the state it's in after a few months.
Sorry, your dong or the body?
The body. You imagine like sort of like then having like 17,000 curries afterwards.
Yeah. True.
And what that would do to that well-oiled machine. It would be quite a mess.
Good point.
Yeah. I do remember it's in I think it's the behind the scenes documentary. They were talking about they couldn't pinch skin on him. It was completely tight. And Chloe Annette was quite disappointed because the others got to touch him. And she didn't. Okay. But as Craig Charles points out, you can't pump your head. So like massive body, but your head's quite small. So I think with the edit where they put Craig Charles's head, it actually balances out that it's a bit in proportion. But we hear Lister scream at the sight of his big muscular body, and we fade out there. So that's where we leave Lister. And then we have one final stinger, which is the cat in the classic cat jacket. I thought that was quite nice that he was in that for the return of Red Dwarf.
You see, I was the thing with that jacket. He was wearing the Ultimate Dimension jacket.
Was he?
The brown one.
Oh, yeah, it was. Well, maybe he was inspired by seeing it, so he made another one.
Maybe.
Yeah. But we finally see, after 2 series, Red Dwarf. We see the model shot. We hear the initial theme as well, which was quite cool.
Yeah, that gave me massive goosebumps hearing the da 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 da.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da. Brilliant.
It's still a great bit of music. I've got it on my phone for waking up. Sometimes it's quite nice to wake up to. But as they go in, again, it's been a success. It's been a 500% success, as they are now buzzing around like a fly inside a giant red dwarf. And that is where we leave season 7, with the cat saying that they have a problem.
Guys!
So the thing about this is, I know they did the gag at the start of series 8, which was very funny, where Starbug ended up inside a rat's bottom. But I would have loved a Land of the Giants kind of episode. I would have loved that.
Yeah, I can imagine they would have as well, but then the BBC finance department
True.
probably is. Probably cried.
Where did I go with like a Land of the Giants thing? It must have been a theme park or something.
Yeah.
Where it's like the massive chairs and things, and you can have pictures taken, and it makes it look tiny and things like that. When I was younger, God knows where that was.
Yeah. I remember actually not liking this ending when it first happened, because it just kind of like, oh, after all that, and then it just ends on this weird little gag of they've shrunk. You don't actually see them back on Red Dwarf, and I remember being slightly annoyed by that. But then I remember thinking, well, at least this means there's got to be another series, right? Because if there isn't another series, then, it's...
Yeah.
I'm just looking at how long it is between Series 8 and Series 7. 1 second.
It's not long.
I think it's only.
I think this would have actually been quite a fun way to finish Red Dwarf forever, because it's so shitty. I think it's a clever gag to end the season that they can that they can pick up on if they want, or just completely leave it if they don't. I get why you wanted to see Red Dwarf, or you wanted to see the inside, the internal, but if they didn't know they were having another series, then it's a good way to kind of hedge your bets in a lot of ways, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's 2 years between 7 and 8.
2 years, okay.
Yeah.
That would kind of give me, because there's not often times I remember what I was thinking when I saw an episode. And I do remember back in the Red, when Lister comes in and goes, hey, look what they did to my body. I'm going, I can't remember what happened there. I vividly remember not remembering what happened at the end of the Series 7.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to I'll have to go back and rewatch it.
Yeah, I think 8 kind of has that thing of, in the same way that we kind of regarded 6 as almost like a reboot or reintroduction of the show. 8 does that again, because we have that shift of, whereas 6 we were on Red Dwarf, now we're no longer on Red Dwarf. When we get to 8, bit of a spoiler for what's coming up with 8, but we're back on Red Dwarf, and so is everybody else. I think it's interesting just how the show, I don't think it gets enough credit for changing itself and adapting. And a lot of people give Series 7 a lot of stick, but it's, it was them trying to adapt and maybe over-rotating a little bit into the drama a bit too much. But by the time they got back to 8, they've readjusted and it's back to more of a sitcom, but there are some serious moments in it.
Yeah, well, from now on, it is a pendulum. It just swings from comedy to drama to comedy drama to pure out sci-fi to. It just seems to go in big swings, because you got to look at Back to Earth, for example, and Promised Land. Those sort of things. It's interesting what happens moving forward from 7 right through to the Promised Land, which is where we are at the moment.
I've not seen anything beyond Back to Earth, but what I found rewatching 7 and 8, which were the series that I hadn't watched as much as the first 6, that Series 7 is grossly underrated. And I think Series 8 is a little bit overrated. So that was not my impression going in. I genuinely thought Series 7 was bad from my recollection, and that Series 8 was fun but flawed. I've changed my opinion on both of Series 7 and Series 8 by rewatching them for this podcast.
I still prefer 8 over 7. It has to be said. 7 for me is a very transitional series. In that, and I think this happened with a lot of shows in the late 90s, because you had, CG was becoming a thing, HD was coming in, and widescreen, and all this kind of thing. And I think it's weird because this is a very transitional series that maybe if you'd waited a bit longer, you wouldn't have had the issues that you had with Series 7. But at the time, there was a lot of time since 6, and people really, really wanted it back. So maybe if they'd hung on a little bit, we would have had something a bit different. But I think in 8 is them starting to get back on. Yes, 8 is a flawed series, but I think it was them starting to really get back in the swing of things. And another thing as well is Series 8, we've got Ed Bye back. And also Doug Naylor is written all but 2 of the scripts.
Yeah, because Paul Alexander becomes a script supervisor rather than a script writer.
Yeah, Paul Alexander's the only other person credited as a script writer on it as well, but that's only for 2 episodes. So we haven't got like Kim Fuller, we haven't got James Hendry, we haven't got people chipping in here and there. And I think that kind of was a thing with Red Dwarf 7, is you've got lots of people trying to help and not everybody's on the same page. Like, say, James Hendry had gone by the time this episode was done, and then it had to be rewritten again. So I think now, going into 8, you've got your core foundation reset, and I'm really looking forward to going back into Series 8 and seeing how that is. But, I'd say again, Series 7's the quality, the actual film quality of 7's really big, isn't it? It's a definite upswing in production. Now we're coming out of 7 and we're going into 8. Final thoughts on Series 7 then, Kurt?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head, really. It's got the lowest ebb for me in Stoke Me a Clipper, but at the same time, things like Ticket to Ride, really good in kind of concept episode. I know obviously there's things with like going back into Earth and there's issues there, but I think generally overall it's a strong series, and yes, I think it is underrated. There is definitely the balance with comedy drama that it doesn't quite get right, and I think it's a struggle moving forward, but overall, it's definitely a series I've come to like more as I've rewatched it. And, I don't think there's really a bad season of Red Dwarf, but at the moment, this would be our weakest series. But at the same time, it's still got some really strong moments and really strong episodes in there.
Mark?
I think what you said about it being a bad series, that was its reputation, and that was certainly my expectation. And it wasn't. I really enjoyed it. And I don't think if we did do a top 8 that Series 7 would end up... Well, I know it wouldn't. It wouldn't end up as my least favourite series, because it would be Series 8 that ended up as my least favourite series. It's whether or not any of the other series, I'd have to think about it, whether or not maybe 1 or 2 series might nudge it up to mid-table, because I really enjoyed this series, particularly because I didn't expect to. How about you then, Carl?
I enjoyed the series, watching it again. I remember when it first got broadcast being really, really up on it and saying, like, this is really good. It's like a film every episode and things like that. Watching it now, obviously after seeing the other series, especially going right the way up to Promised Land, there are bits in it for me which are more writing bits that kind of let it down for me. The concepts are good. The filming looks great, but there are bits when they've brought in other writers who are still trying to find their feet. I think that causes the writing to suffer somewhat. We talked about it last episode with me not being a fan of like the Clearasil joke and things being wedged in, almost like you have to put them in because they're quote unquote Red Dwarf jokes, and I think coming out of this, and again, everybody finding their feet and things like that, and Doug Naylor getting more comfortable with working on his own and being a one-man machine. That's why I think while 8 is not like visually better, I do find the quality of it better. So that's what, but I'm really looking forward to going in. I'm really interested as well with Mark saying that it's kind of gone down in his opinion, because this will be me watching it almost fresh. I've not watched it before this in prep for the episodes. I'm going to do that coming up. So I'm really looking forward to looking at it and seeing how it is.
I've not done it before, actually, but I did a bit of a Matt Latham on this, whereas I watched Series 7 for this run of recordings, and I was really buzzing from Series 7, so I just carried on watching, which I know Matt tends to do, and he kind of does that. And maybe it was because I was so pleased with Series 7 that I was disappointed with Series 8 because I expected it to be great. So I am going to go in with an open mind, and hopefully I'll enjoy Series 8 a little bit more when I kind of take a critical look at it for our next run of episodes.
I think just on top of another final thought on 7 is that I think part of the reason why it gets a bit of a bad rap is because it didn't know what it wanted to do. So we had all of the extended stuff. You had episodes that were released without any audience, episodes then redone because then they had the audience at some point, and there's a cacophony of like loads of things happening in 7 which haven't been done before. You've got episodes running long so you don't have the intro credits. You've got episodes like sort of trying to fill so many things in and throw so many things in there, you can't really distill it down to a normal length episode. And you've got different versions. And we said this in the run up to 7 quite a lot, where we're saying we don't know how we're gonna manage Series 7 because it's all over the place, And I think that is part of the problem, is that you've got extended versions which have got no laughter tracks on them. You've got laughter tracks, but the laughter tracks are recorded post the episode production. So there's a lot of things, I think, a lot of things to juggle in this series. And I think that kind of adds to the whole nature of, it's not Red Dwarf like we know it. It's going to be a comedy drama, but there's also these extended versions which are meant to be feature lengthy. Then this is meant to happen, and it's different production style. It's a lot of things that are kind of thrown in the air with it, and some people don't like change. So there's an element of like the first reactions might be a bit of, well, it's not Red Dwarf like I know it. But then obviously in hindsight, looking back at it, some of it's really well done. Yeah. And I think it's that. It's and definitely feels to me like, and I don't want to put words in Doug Naylor's, in speaking for Doug Naylor here, but definitely feels to me he was definitely in a transitional period of like how do you manage a Red Dwarf on your own as a showrunner? When you've got Rob Grant sitting there, Doug Naylor, the partnership, they would just like they did in 6, spend all that time in the house together to get those episodes done, and you had them battling off against each other and getting self-editing each other probably to a point where you can release an episode and Doug's doing this on his own with, as you say, new writers and stuff like that. And it just seems interesting that pretty much every single episode at some point either had deleted scenes or was extended or had to be cut because of certain reasons. And that for me, I think, is the reason why it's so transitional and so it's so diverse in its reviews for a lot of people.
Plus, of course, the major thing, we've lost Chris Barry.
Yeah.
And Ed Bye, who's was there for 5 series at least. Well, there's only one place we can go now, and that is back to the Red.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we're going to do Crime Traveller and fuck tons of specials in between, including a Christmas special that we have agonised over what the fuck we're going to do. There's lots happening.
Yeah.
And I can't see Series 8 coverage dropping until the middle of next year, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Let's not make people think it's coming soon, Carl.
Okay, so the full length of that is there's only one thing we can do now, and that's go back to a multitude of specials before eventually getting back to the Red next year.
But within 2 years.
Yeah.
Not as long as the show, but within 2 years, we'll be back.
We'll be back in the red. All that's left for me to do is thank Mark and Kurt for being on the show today. Mark, where can people find you online?
At the moment, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram under Mark Adams HC, which, as we've established, stands for Humanist Celebrant rather than Hardcore. And the only other podcast I'm doing at the moment is Chucky Vision, which is about the Child's Play and Chucky franchise. By the time this airs, we will be working our way through Series 2 of Chucky on a weekly basis. That's at Chucky Vision on Twitter. And if you want to find it, whatever podcast provider you're listening to, Shipwrecked and Comatose, just search for Chucky Vision. There's only one.
Excellent. Kurt?
Yeah, you can find me on Linktree with all my links there. It's linktr.ee/R Muldrake. That's RMULDRAKE, where you can find all the things I'm doing on YouTube and on the podcast network. Things like Star Trek. You've got a thing on Lost on YouTube. We've got Yellow Jackets, X-Files, all that kind of thing. So come and find me there.
Excellent. And you can find all my links at All My Links. So that's allmylinks.com/Mr. Carl. And that's the unabbreviated MISTER. Right. So thank you very much for joining me today. Thank you very much to everyone out there for listening and downloading at home. Do go on the page or go on whatever podcast provider you go on and leave us a 5-star review or any kind of review, but be nice.
And don't criticise us for swearing when we warn you we're going to fucking swear. Fuck cunt-ass.
And remember,
Guys, we've got a problem.
We've always got a problem.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast, was created and produced by Mark Adams and Kurt North. You can find us on Twitter at Red Dwarf Pod, and we are part of the We Made This Podcast network, which can be found online at wemadethispod.com or on Twitter at We Made This Pod.
Welcome to the third age of podcasting.
The name of the podcast
Is a dream given form.
a show about J. Michael Straczynski's Babylon 5.
For the We Made This podcast network.
Join us in 2022 as we look back at themes and ideas from across the show's history.
Today we're going to be discussing the three prominent leaders of Babylon 5. Sinclair, Sheridan and Delenn.
Everything from Earth and the Shadows and Minbari all the way through from early days of Season 1 all the way through to the Interstellar Alliance, and it's their legacy. Interstellar Alliance is really the legacy of these three characters. We are kind of going to potentially some scary territory here, looking at the parallels between Earth Force and Babylon 5 and the real world in which we live in now.
It is a really insidious way of doing things, and the more I think about it and the more I watch that scene and the way that Pierce speaks and talks about it, it really just fills me with chills because, you know, our politicians do this all the time. They talk like this all the time and they hide their true intention behind false promises. Current situation with the potential reboot of Babylon 5 for the CW network.
He's been involved in comic writing, he's been for Spider-Man, he's done shows like Sense8, which is very progressive as well. He's going to bring all that experience into the project, so I think it's going to be a very different show. And even some special guests too. Lita herself, Patricia Torman.
I love hearing that people are still interested in Babylon 5, and, you know, it's really an honor to continue the conversation around a show that meant so much to us. And, you know, it's the little show that could.
Yeah. And then in 2023, join us for the 30th anniversary of Babylon 5 as we start fortnightly lookbacks at The Gathering Season 1 and beyond.
So, join us for A Dream Given Form.
Our last best hope for peace.